Commander Kuhl walked into the bright classroom at the military school. His body was covered in old scars from many battles. The young alien soldiers sat in rows, waiting to hear what he had to say. They looked bored. To them, the war with humans happened a long time ago. Kyul stood at the front of the room and looked at each student. His dark eyes were tired. He had seen too much war. The students were young and had never fought a real battle. They thought they knew everything about fighting. "You think you know about the human war?" Kuhl said in a quiet voice. "You read books about it. You heard stories from other soldiers. But none of you really understand what happened out there." One student rolled his eyes. Another looked at his data pad instead of listening. They had heard old war stories before. This was just another boring class about ancient history. Kuhl noticed their lack of interest. He had expected this. Young soldiers always thought they were smarter than the old ones, before humans came to our galaxy. War was simple. Kuhl continued. The side with better weapons won. The side with more ships won. The side with better technology always defeated the weaker side. We had conquered 17 different alien races using these simple rules. He pressed a button and a hologram appeared in the air. It showed a small blue planet far away from the center of the galaxy. This is Earth. It is the third planet round a normal star. When our scouts first found this world, they sent back reports. That made us laugh. The humans had just learned how to travel between stars. Their ships were held together with metal tape and glue. Their weapons were hundreds of years behind ours. Some students started to pay attention now. They had never heard these details before. Our high command barely spent any time planning the invasion, Kuhl said. They thought it would take 3 months to conquer the entire human race. The humans had no chance against our superior technology and training. Kuhl's voice became darker. His claws scratched the metal podium as he remembered. We were so confident that we sent only a small fleet. We thought the humans would surrender as soon as they saw our ships. Every other race had done this when they saw our power. They gave up and accepted our rule. The classroom was quiet now. Even the bored students were listening. The first human ships we encountered were pathetic, Kuhl continued. They were small and weak. Some of them were clearly built in a hurry. We could see where human workers had welded extra armor plates onto the hulls. The ships looked like they might fall apart before we could destroy them. He paused and looked out the window at the peaceful campus outside. Our fleet commander sent a message to the human ships. It was the standard surrender demand that we had used 17 times before. We told them their situation was hopeless. We said they should give up now to avoid unnecessary death. We promised them that if they surrendered, we would treat them fairly under galactic law. Kuhl turned back to face his students. The human response was not what we expected. Instead of accepting our terms, they sent back a message that confused our translation computers. The message was short. It said, "Come and take it." Several students looked puzzled. They did not understand why this was important. We had never heard this phrase before. Kuhl explained. Our scholars spent hours trying to understand what it meant. Was it a formal diplomatic response? Was it some kind of religious statement? We could not figure out why the humans would send such a strange message. He clicked to the next hologram. It showed tactical positions of ships in space. What happened next changed everything we thought we knew about warfare. The human ships did not retreat. They did not try to avoid battle. Instead, they flew directly at our much larger fleet. Kuhl's voice became very quiet. At first, we thought they were trying to ram our ships in desperation. But then we realized something terrible. This was not desperation. This was their plan. From the beginning, the room was completely silent now. When their ships took damage, instead of retreating to repair them, the human pilots did something we had never seen before. They turned their broken ships into weapons. They aimed their dying vessels directly at our most important ships and flew them like guided missiles. One student raised her hand. "But, Commander, that would mean the pilots would die." Kuehl nodded. Slowly. Yes, they knew they would die. That was the point. We learned later that humans have a word for this kind of attack. They call it sacrifice. But to us, it looked like madness. He stared at the hologram for a long moment. We won that first battle. We destroyed most of their ships, but we lost 3 times more vessels than we had planned. And we realized something that would haunt us for the next phase of war. Kuehl looked directly at each student. We were not fighting a normal enemy. We were fighting a species that had turned their willingness to die into their greatest weapon. And none of us were prepared for that kind of warfare. The bell rang, ending the class. But none of the students moved to leave. Kuehl pressed another button and the hologram changed. Now it showed the edge of the human star system. The image displayed many red dots surrounding fewer blue dots. The red dots were human ships. The blue dots were Kuehl's fleet. I was 25 years old when I first saw humans fight, Kuehl said. I was a junior officer on the warship called Sovereigns. Edge, it was my first real battle. I thought I was ready for anything. The students leaned forward in their chairs. They could hear something different in their teacher's voice now. It was fear. Our fleet had 47 large warships. The humans had only 5 ships that could barely be called fighters. Our weapons could destroy a planet. Their weapons could barely scratch our armor. Kuehl pointed to the hologram. Look at these numbers. Any military academy student can see that this battle should have lasted 10 minutes. We should have destroyed them completely with no losses on our side. One student raised his hand. What went wrong? Commander, Kuehl's claws clicked together nervously. Nothing went wrong with our equipment. Nothing went wrong with our tactics. What went wrong was our understanding of what we were fighting. He walked closer to the students. The human ships moved in patterns we had never seen before. Instead of staying far away and shooting at us, they flew straight toward our biggest ships. At first, we thought they were trying to escape past us. The hologram began to move, showing the battle as it happened. The first human ship took heavy damage from our guns. Its hull was cracked open. We could see fires burning inside. The ship should have exploded or the crew should have abandoned it. Kuehl stopped walking and stared at the floor. Instead, something impossible happened. The damaged human ship turned directly toward our flagship. It was accelerating, not slowing down. Our sensors showed that the human pilot was still alive inside the burning ship. The classroom was completely quiet. Even the air circulation system seemed loud. Our commander tried to contact the human pilot. He wanted to offer medical help. He thought the human was confused because of his injuries. The human pilot responded to our call. Kuehl looked up at his students. His eyes were wet. The human was not confused. He was not asking for help. He was laughing. Actually laughing as his ship flew toward us like a missile. His last words before impact were "See you in hell." Ugly. Several students gasped. They had never heard of anyone doing such a thing. The human ship hit our flagship just below the main weapons. The explosion killed 300 of our soldiers instantly. But that was not the worst part. Kuehl activated another part of the hologram. It showed more human ships doing the same thing. Within 5 minutes, 3 more human ships had done the exact same thing. Each one was damaged and should have retreated. Instead, each pilot steered his dying ship into one of our vessels. A female student raised her hand. Commander, were they out of ammunition? Did they have no other choice? No, Q replied. We found out later that they still had weapons and fuel. They chose to do this. It was their plan from the beginning. He pressed another button. The hologram showed human writing in their strange alphabet after the battle. We captured some human equipment. Our translation computers worked for us. To understand their battle plans, we found something that shocked our entire command staff. The writing changed to show alien symbols that the students could read. The humans had a name for this type of attack. They called it kamikaze. We learned that this was an ancient human military tactic from their own planet. They had been using it for thousands of years. Kul sat down heavily in his chair. He suddenly looked much older. Do you understand what this means? This was not the desperate action of defeated soldiers. This was normal human warfare. They had practiced this. They had trained for it. They expected to die in battle. One brave student asked, "How did the battle end?" "We won," Kuhl said quietly. "We destroyed all 5 human ships, but we lost 8 of our own vessels and over 2,000 soldiers, according to our military rules. We should have won with 0 losses." He stood up and walked to the window. But the real victory belonged to the humans. 5 small ships had caused massive damage to a fleet that was designed to conquer planets, and we began to understand that we were not fighting a normal war. Kuhl turned back to face the class. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the human pilot who was laughing as he died. In all our military history, no soldier from any race had ever laughed while dying in battle. We fight to live. We retreat when we are losing. We surrender when we cannot win. His voice became very soft. But humans do not think like us. They seem to enjoy the idea of taking enemies with them when they died. And that terrified every soldier in our fleet. The bell rang again. But no one moved tomorrow. "I will tell you about the siege that lasted 3 months, Kuhl said. Class dismissed. The students left slowly, talking quietly among themselves about what they had heard. The next day, Kuhl stood before his students again. His hands shook slightly as he activated the hologram. This time it showed a small space station orbiting a gas giant planet. "This is mining station Kepler-47, Kuhl said. His voice was quieter than usual. It was supposed to be the easiest mission of the war. Our intelligence reports said it was just a civilian mining operation with about 200 humans. The hologram showed a simple industrial facility with docking bays and processing equipment. High Command gave us 1 month to evacuate the station. They said the humans would probably leave on their own when they saw our ships approaching. After all, these were not soldiers. They were just workers and their families." Kuhl pressed a button and the date display changed to show the passage of time. The evacuation took 97 days. 3 months and 7 days of the worst fighting I have ever experienced. A student raised her hand. "But, Commander, if they were just civilians, why did it take so long?" Kuhl's eyes became distant as he remembered. "Because we learned that there is no such thing as just civilians when it comes to humans. Every human is a potential warrior." The hologram changed to show the station's interior. The students could see mining equipment that had been changed into weapons. When we arrived at the station, we expected the humans to pack their belongings and leave peacefully. Instead, they had spent weeks preparing for our arrival. They had turned their mining tools into military equipment. Kuhl pointed to different parts of the display. Industrial cutting lasers became artillery guns. Chemical processes were converted into explosive manufacturing plants. Heavy mining equipment was repositioned to create defensive barriers. He clicked to the next image. It showed complex tunnel systems. The humans had also expanded the station. They dug new tunnels through the asteroid the station was built on. They created hidden passages and secret rooms. When we thought we had secured one area, humans would appear behind us from tunnels we did not know existed. The classroom was silent except for the soft humming of the air system. But the most disturbing discovery came on day 15 of the siege. We captured a communication center and found something that made our commanders sick. The hologram showed a small room filled with communication equipment. At the controls was a very young human. The humans were using their children as communication operators. These young ones, some barely 8 or 9 years old, were coordinating the entire defense of the station. Several students looked shocked. In their culture, children were kept far away from any danger. We tried to negotiate with the adult humans. We said we would not harm the children if they surrendered. The human leader, a female named Hannah, told us that the children had volunteered for their duties. Kuhl's voice cracked slightly. Volunteered. The human children wanted to help fight us. He walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful campus. Day after day, we fought through the station corridors. Every room was trapped. Every doorway was dangerous. The humans had turned ordinary objects into weapons. A simple chair might explode when touched. A water pipe might spray poison gas. The hologram showed booby traps made from mining equipment. On day 43, we thought we had finally cornered the last group of humans in the main processing center. There were only 17 of them left, including 3 children. Kuhl turned back to his students. His face looked very tired. Our commander demanded that they surrender. We had overwhelming force. They had no escape route. Any reasonable beings would have given up. He paused for a long moment instead. The human leader Hannah activated the station's main reactor. She had rigged it to overload and explode. The blast would destroy the entire station and kill everyone on it, including our boarding parties. One student gasped. She was willing to kill her own children. She was willing to kill everyone rather than surrender. Kuhl replied. Hannah gave us 10 minutes to withdraw all our forces from the station if we did not leave. She would detonate the reactor. The hologram showed the reactor core with warning lights flashing red. Our commander thought she was bluffing. No parent would kill their own offspring. He refused to withdraw our troops. Kuhl's hands clenched into fists. Hannah was not bluffing. She started the countdown. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes. Our soldiers were running for the exit tunnels, but many could not escape in time. The display showed evacuation routes through the station, at 1 minute remaining. Our commander finally ordered a complete withdrawal. All our ships pulled back to a safe distance. We watched the station on our screens. Kuhl's voice became very quiet. In those final seconds, we intercepted one last transmission from inside the station. The 17 humans were singing together, adults and children. They were singing as they waited to die. The room was completely silent. The explosion could be seen from 3-star systems away. The humans chose death rather than surrender, and they chose it while singing. Kuhl sat down heavily. That was the day I realized we were not fighting a war against humans. We were fighting against something much more dangerous. We were fighting against a species that treated death as victory. A student asked quietly, "What song were they singing, Commander?" Kuhl looked at her with sad eyes. We never figured out the translation, but our communication officer said it sounded happy. Kuhl walked slowly to his desk and picked up a data pad. His claws tapped nervously against the metal surface as he looked at his students. "Today I will tell you about something that confused us more than human weapons or human tactics," he said. "I will tell you about human rules." The hologram activated. and showed a thick book with human writing on the cover. Humans claimed to follow something called the Geneva Conventions. These were ancient rules from their home planet about how to fight wars properly. They said these rules were sacred and could never be broken. A student raised his hand. "What kind of rules?" "Commander, rules about treating prisoners fairly. Rules about not harming medical workers. Rules about protecting civilians during battles. Very civilized rules that we respected." Kuhl's mandibles clicked together in what might have been bitter amusement. At first, we were impressed. Finally, we thought humans were showing some sense. They had rules to make war less terrible. The hologram changed to show a battlefield with human medics treating wounded soldiers. In the early battles, human medical workers would treat our wounded soldiers alongside their own people. They wore special red crosses on their uniforms too. Show they were not fighters. We honored this tradition and did not shoot at their medics. Kuhl paused and looked directly at his students. But as the war continued and humans became more desperate, something changed. They started calling their rules something different. He pressed a button and the hologram showed human soldiers in a meeting. We intercepted a human. Military communication, where their commander was explaining battle plans. Instead of calling them the Geneva Conventions, he called them the Geneva Suggestions. Several students looked confused. "Suggestions, Commander?" "Yes, the humans decided that their sacred rules were now just suggestions, things they might follow if it was convenient." The hologram showed a battlefield where strange things were happening. I witnessed this change myself on the moon called Titan 7. A human medic was treating one of our wounded soldiers who had been shot in the leg. She was bandaging his wound very carefully and giving him medicine for the pain. Kuhl walked closer to his students. At the same time, she was talking on her communication device. She was directing artillery fire at our main camp. With one hand, she helped our soldier. With the other hand, she was trying to kill more of our soldiers. The classroom was very quiet. When we accused her of breaking the Geneva Conventions, she said that treating wounded enemies was required by the rules, but the rules said nothing about medics not being allowed to coordinate attacks. A female student raised her hand. "How is that possible? Humans are very good at finding loopholes in their own rules," Kuhl replied. "They follow the exact words of their laws but ignore the spirit of what the laws mean." The hologram changed to show a group of human soldiers who looked badly injured. On Titan 7, we also encountered something that still gives me nightmares. We found a human unit that had been declared medically dead by their own doctors. Students looked confused. "Dead, Commander. Their injuries were so severe that human medical science said they could not survive. Massive blood loss, damaged organs, broken bones. According to human medicine, these soldiers should have been unconscious or dead." Kuhl's voice became quieter. Instead, they were still fighting. They had injected themselves with combat drugs and stimulants. They were using machines to pump blood through their bodies. Some were wearing electronic devices that shocked their hearts to keep them beating. The hologram showed human soldiers who looked more like machines than living beings. These walking dead humans fought for 6 more hours. They moved slowly and could barely see, but they would not stop fighting. When we asked their commander why he allowed this, he said the Geneva Conventions only applied to living soldiers. A student asked, "What happened to them?" "They eventually died from their injuries, but they killed 43 of our soldiers first." Kuhl pressed another button. The hologram showed a space battle around a large station. The worst incident happened during the Battle of Europa Station. We had surrounded a human unit completely. They had no ammunition left and no way to escape. We expected them to surrender. He paused and took a deep breath instead. They did something that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They began rigging their own wounded soldiers with explosives. Several students made sounds of shock and disgust. The humans would strap bombs to their injured comrades and then launch them at our positions using mechanical catapults. These living missiles would explode when they hit our defensive lines. Kuhl's hands were shaking now. We contacted the commander immediately. We said this violated their own Geneva Conventions about protecting wounded soldiers, the human commander's response was recorded by our communication systems. The hologram showed the text of the human message. He said, "Geneva says we cannot use poison gas against you. It says we cannot torture prisoners. It does not say anything about creative ordnance delivery systems." The room was completely silent. Creative ordnance delivery systems, that is, what they called using their own dying soldiers as weapons. Kuhl sat down heavily in his chair. That was the day we realized that human rules were not meant to limit human behavior. They were meant to find new ways to justify terrible things. A student asked quietly, "Did the wounded soldiers agree to this?" Kuhl looked at her with tired eyes. They volunteered. Kuhl stood at the front of the classroom for the last time. His students had changed over the past week. They no longer looked bored or confident. They looked worried and thoughtful. "Today I will tell you why the war ended," Kuhl said, "and why we will never go back to human space." He activated the hologram one final time. It showed a simple calendar with dates marked in red. The human war officially ended after 4 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Our High Command announced a complete victory. They said we had successfully contained the human threat. Kuhl looked at each student carefully. But that announcement was a lie. We did not win the war. We ran away from it. A student raised his hand. "But Commander, our history books say we conquered the humans. Our history books say many things that are not true," Kuhl replied. "The real reason we stopped fighting had nothing to do with military victory. The hologram changed to show medical reports and psychological evaluations after 3 years of fighting humans. Something terrible was happening to our soldiers. They were becoming sick in ways we had never seen before." Kuhl pressed a button and the hologram showed brain scans and medical charts. Our military doctors reported that 60% of our soldiers were suffering from what humans call post-traumatic stress. But our species had never experienced this condition before. We did not even have words for it. He walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful campus. Our soldiers were having nightmares every night. They would wake up screaming about human laughter echoing through the corridors of dying ships. They would hear human battle songs even when there were no humans nearby. Kuhl rolled up his sleeve and showed his arm to the students. His forearm was covered with thin scars that formed strange patterns. "These are not battle wounds," he said quietly. "I gave these to myself during the sleep terrors that followed my return from the war." Several students looked shocked. Self-harm was almost unknown in their culture. For 2 years after the war ended, I would wake up every night thinking I could hear humans singing their death songs. I would claw at my own skin trying to make the sound stop. He rolled his sleeve back down and returned to the front of the classroom. I was not the only one. Thousands of our soldiers were doing the same thing. Our military hospitals were full of warriors who had defeated the humans but could not defeat their own memories. The hologram showed statistics about soldier suicides and medical discharges, but the medical problems were not the real reason we ended the war. The real reason was much worse. Kuhl sat down and looked directly at his students. We realized that every human death was designed to hurt us psychologically. Every time we killed a human, that death was meant to damage our minds and spirits. A female student asked, "How could death be a weapon?" "Commander, humans had learned to weaponize their own deaths. When they died, they did not die quietly or peacefully. They died in ways that would give us nightmares for years afterward. The hologram showed battle reports and incident summaries. They would sing while they died. They would laugh while they died. They would tell jokes while they died. They would ask us to give messages to their families while they died. Kuhl's voice became very quiet. The worst part was that they seemed genuinely happy to die if it meant hurting us. They treated their own deaths as victories. He stood up and walked to the holographic display. Our psychologists studied this behavior for months. They concluded that humans had evolved a completely different relationship with death than any other species in TH. E-Galaxy, the hologram showed comparative studies of different alien species. Most species fear death and try to avoid it. Humans seemed to view death as just another tool they could use against their enemies. They were not afraid of dying. They were afraid of dying uselessly. A student raised his hand. So why did we stop fighting them? Kuhl pressed a button and the hologram showed the final battle reports. Because we realized that to truly defeat humans, we would have to become like them. We would have to stop fearing death. We would have to start treating our own deaths as weapons. The room was completely silent. Our high command faced a terrible choice. We could continue fighting until we destroyed every human in the galaxy. But doing so would require us to adopt human methods of warfare. We would have to sacrifice our soldiers the way humans sacrificed theirs. Kuhl looked at each student in turn. The High Command decided that defeating humans was not worth becoming like humans. So they created the quarantine zone around human space and forbade any contact with them. The hologram showed a map of the galaxy with a large red zone marked around the human star system. For 20 years, no ship from any species has entered human space. The quarantine is absolute and permanent. A student asked, "Will we ever see humans again?" "Commander?" Kuhl walked to the window and stared out at the peaceful campus where young soldiers trained for wars that followed rational rules. "I hope not," he said quietly, "because if we ever meet humans again, it will mean they have learned to travel between galaxies, and if they can do that, nowhere in the universe will be safe from their particular form of madness." He turned back to face his students one last time. "Class dismissed, and remember what you have learned here. Some victories are not worth winning." The students left in silence, carrying with them the knowledge of why their people feared an enemy they had never met.